people ask me about 5-amino-1-MQ. I said, what should I add it in? I said, when your fat loss stalls, and the only way to get the fat off is by throwing the kitchen sink at it.
One sort of, and this is pure anecdote, since it's gone back in, now I'm not going to promote this, but when we were on vacation, I was probably sleeping 6 to 7 hours. So I was going to bed about 11:30, waking up at 6:30, 7 a.m. Now I can go to bed 11 p.m. and wake up 4:45 a.m. So it's like, 5.5 hours, 6 hours sleep. And my sleep quality and I guess perceived rest is just as good as the longer duration of sleep. So in terms of like the SLU going back in, it seems again from that energy metabolism perspective, I'd never say you can get away with less sleep unless you actually feel like physically and mentally refreshed. But definitely there's been, change in sleep duration, but no impact to recovery since that's gone back in. So obviously an energy metabolism perspective, sleep improve and less sleep required to feel more rested.
Okay. You also take a break off your self-prescribed 4-IU growth hormone on training days?
So
people couldn't believe that, by the way, when I made a reel about that.
Yeah, I mean, when we went away, I added it back in because obviously it was out with all the shows, and then it's now back in again, probably 3 weeks, and probably it'll come back out again. I always like to stop it about 2 weeks before any show, just to make sure that me personally, I know when I do take it, my weight goes up about 2.5 kilos, so about 5 pounds of fluid goes on from, I guess, intramuscular fullness. But yeah, between the two of them, I guess I can be a more efficient business person where I can, sleep 5 hours and still operate at high efficiency.
There you go. So it pays for itself because now you can work more. And even though it's quite an expensive compound, like all the new stuff that we usually talk about. Dean, do you have access to 5-amino-1-MQ?
Yeah.
So could you, besides increasing the SLU to 600, 700 micrograms, could you also throw in 100 to 150 milligrams 5-amino-1-MQ to see if that really strips the last little bit of fat off? Because, of course, it helps with, it's an N-methyltransferase inhibitor, right? Nicotinamide N-methyltransferase inhibitor. So it prevents the breakdown or promotes the recycling of NAD+. And I think, when you're 5%, 6% body fat, this fat metabolism really slows down in adipose tissue. So based on the mechanisms that I know of SLU and 5-amino-1-MQ, I think this would go really well together. But you would be a perfect example to run this experiment.
Well, I think when we get off this, then I think I know what I'll put an order in, and let's put it to the test. Let's put it to the test.
Yeah, I would love to see it because I think you can really dial it in with that stack alone. Of course, it's such a shame that these are poorly examined compounds that are super expensive, even with discount codes. But I've been, the 5-amino-1-MQ, I did a deep dive on like 2 or 3 years ago already, and then people are always hesitant to run it. But I think if you just run those 3, methylene blue, SLU, and 5-amino-1-MQ, I think sky's the limit regarding fat loss.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
What's the cost for the 5-amino?
So that would run you maybe $200 to $250 a bottle.
Okay. How long does a bottle last? Typical dosing?
Month.
Okay. Yeah, that's not.
I'm just looking up here from.
It's like a day of growth hormone.
Yeah.
From my source.
I just remember my wife injecting like $200 worth of follicle stimulating hormone every day right next to me. It's like, I've never injected that much in my life in one shot.
So 120 pound for 50 milligram capsules. So that's what, if you take 150, that's 10 days. So what are we looking at for a month? About 360 pound for the month. But
It's not horrible.
I think let's try even the 2 weeks. Let's do the 150.
Yeah, I
for 2
think
weeks
you
and
only
see.
need it at the end. Like I always tell people that people ask me about 5-amino 1-MQ. I said, what should I add it in? I said, when your fat loss stalls, and the only way to get the fat off is by throwing the kitchen sink at it, and that's from 5%, 6% downwards. So I think Dean is in a perfect position to kind of prove that point. To see, besides the SLU, if you throw in the 5-amino 1-MQ and have this synergistic effect regarding fat burning and mitochondrial efficiency, if that is worth the money to run at the last end. So maybe one bottle can get the job done.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. Obviously, we're at amateur level, as to speak, when certain protocols like this start spiraling properly. I know there are some, of the top level IFBBs that are using some of these compounds, but it's not really, when you look at the sort of guru coaches, I doubt they're sort of coming at the angle that we are from a mitochondrial efficiency perspective.
Why do you think these pro guys are coming to us for these questions though? I mean, I don't know about you, Dean, but like since the last podcast, I've had 7 IFBB pros in my inbox asking about this kind of stuff.
Yeah. And it's good to see.
And some of these guys are prepping for the Mr. Olympia,
Yeah.
So we might see something different this year in some of the athletes.
Yeah. Wouldn't it be nice to get them away from the traditional stuff, right? Like the thyroid.
Yeah. Or 7 grams of mastrone,
DMP. 7 grams of mastrone with 100 milligrams of test.
Yeah.
Pack of champions.
I do know a couple of guys that run like a gram or 2 of mastrone into the show. And of course it's,
800 is standard. I would say 800 standard.
Yeah, but the guys that run like 2 or 3 grams of mastrone, and of course they're peeled and they're super, they got a great look. But I think you can get the job done with a gram of mastrone and just throw in some of these compounds for just mitochondrial efficiency or fat burning. And then of course the stack is going to be way more complicated. Like look at my stack, it's like 25 fucking compounds.
Yeah.
But it's all quite low dosages, and you would assume that even though the overall tolerance to drugs is high, based on each individual compound, it's you shouldn't expect too much side effects or negative effects.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe this SLU-PP-332 can actually help with kidney health and heart health based on the the models that I've seen. Blood work will show a month from now, before I go to the Mr. Olympia, if certain markers improved or not.
Well, I had bloods done with the SLU probably back in June, I think was the last that I'd done. Obviously halfway into prep, as to speak, and liver enzymes were perfect. The only thing that was a little bit skewed was inflammation, because at the time I was having gut problems from not realizing I was lactose intolerant, and that was flagging up on the blood work. But everything looked as it normally was for me. So I mean, the sort of benignness to it, you can't promote safety, but N=1 blood work looked okay. So it'd be interesting to see the more people who utilize it, do their own blood work, seeing what correlations come. Because obviously that's how we've gained insights into the health detriments of AAS, is from, years upon years of blood work being gathered and the correlations made, whether it's the literature or even anecdote or coaching. You start to see all these patterns, and then you can develop, obviously, across to the model of why those things happen.
Yeah, I saw a lot in the comment section of the previous podcast, a lot of people mentioning their experiences with SLU. And since the last podcast, I get a lot of questions, but also a lot of messages on where to source this stuff. So you send them, by email. I'm sure there'll be a lot of guys asking for sources after this. That's all right. We got discount codes. Don't worry, we got your back. But I think, once I really drop that deep dive on SLU, then we'll get some clear anecdotal responses underneath. And then all we can see is just, how the industry is responding. Because I do think that this stack of methylene blue and SLU is a game changer.